GrandOldTeam TV, nice to see you today. First of all, I just wanted to say a big thank you for all the comments and feedback that I've had in the first few weeks. A lot of it's been very positive, and some really constructive feedback that I've been able to take on board and try and implement in the show. Now, when I was asked over the summer whether or not I'd like to put together some video content for GrandOldTeam.com in the form of GrandOldTeam TV, I was a little bit reluctant and apprehensive at first, because I already know that there are Evertonians out there producing some really good video orientated content on Everton. So when I decided to go ahead with this channel, I thought, let's try and mix it up a little bit and let's try and get as many Evertonians involved as possible. So this week I'm going to be interviewing a lad called Seddo on GrandOldTeam TV. That's coming up in a second. Seddo has a massive Twitter following. He has over 7,000 followers. He's appeared on the Everton Fan Focus podcast, and as a kid he played alongside Wayne Rooney. He's a really nice guy, and we spoke about everything from the game at the weekend against West Brom, the positives to take from that, and also transfers in and transfers out, amongst some other things as well. So put the kettle on, sit back and relax, and watch me and Seddo talk about Everton for the next about half an hour. So let's start with the match then at the weekend. Obviously, Everton played West Brom at the Hawthorns and ran out 2-1 winners in the end. Give us your conclusion then, Seddo. What did you think? A brief little description of the game.
I thought we were really solid. Obviously, the first couple of minutes when that goal went in, it wasn't the best of starts for us. But after that, I think we got a good foothold in the game. We were dominating. We kept possession well. Obviously, the substitution that Koeman made with dragging McCarthy off obviously proves, in my opinion, probably the turning point of the game, to be fair.
Yeah, that was brave, and something that I think we're so used to over the last few years, having a manager in Martinez who will sit on it and wait for and leave it. I mean, I remember an example of this was Stoke around Christmas last year, the 4-3 at Goodison, when we got ourselves back in front and he's left Koeman on. And Shaqiri's having a laugh down that side with Galloway. Obviously, Koeman's leaving Galloway exposed, and everybody in the whole ground was going, right, take Koeman off now. Let's shore things up. And obviously, he didn't react, and the rest is history with regards to that game. So I think you're pretty impressed with Koeman making that change at that time.
The thing that impresses me with that particular substitution is he's seen it after 25, 30, 35 minutes. And he's been in charge of the team. He's had 2 competitive games, and he's put his stamp and authority on it straight away. Roberto Martinez was in charge for 2 years, and he wouldn't have done that. So for Koeman to have the balls basically to turn around to McCarthy and go, right, this isn't working, off you come, and brings on Romelu Lukaku, I think it just totally changed the game.
Yeah, and it just shows you that he's willing to make the big calls, because he knows, as a manager, you're going to upset McCarthy there, and we'll get onto James McCarthy in a little bit, I think, because obviously there's rumours of him being linked with Sunderland today. But as you say, he's got to make that call. That's early doors to bring a player off. Everybody in the stadium is kind of thinking, it's a bit embarrassing being, as I can imagine, as a professional getting roped off at that time. So it shows that he's willing to make the big calls, doesn't it?
I mean, for me, that shows the difference between having a manager and having a world-class manager. We had a manager in Roberto. Now we've got a world-class manager in Ronald Koeman. So he's not going to be scared to make them decisions. And you can see it in his press conferences. The way he comes across in them, he seems quite commanding, and he's just got a sort of aura and a presence about him. And I think the players will probably respect that.
Yeah, definitely. I can see it. Well, he's obviously not messing around. I mean, we've seen that with the honesty that we've experienced from him in the press conferences as well. I mean, the way he was talking about McGeady and Niasse, these lads, he's just saying basically, they're not good enough. I mean, my old man was telling me today, I've not seen this, but he's come out and made comments about Joel's attitude in goal, and said he's a bit upset that he doesn't think he's going to be first choice this year. And he's basically just come out and said it's not good enough. I mean, I don't know where my old man's read that. I mean, my old man could have just basically made that up. But it doesn't sound like it's completely wild to assume that Koeman would be willing to say that about some of his players, as we've already seen.
To be fair, I think a lot of people will probably have that view anyway. I mean, my personal opinion on Robles is I personally don't think he's good enough to be number one. And I think the majority of Evertonians don't think he's good enough to be Everton's number one, which is why I think some Evertonians want Joe Hart to come in and take that position on.
Yeah, well, again, we'll talk about transfers in a second, and obviously Joe Hart will feature within that. But yeah, you're spot on with regards to Robles there. I mean, I think last year we were in a situation with Howard where it just got to such a really extreme point with him where we would have welcomed anybody. He could have brought Thomas Myra back and we'd have been sound.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At that point. But yeah, no, I've got question marks with regards to Joel's ability there. But focusing on the match then on Saturday, Gareth Barry for me was terrific.
He looked like a 22-year-old, didn't he?
He did, didn't he? Now, what's changed? I was thinking about this today. What has changed? Is it the fact that he's just had a new lease of life, or is it the role that Idrissa Guy's playing now, in your opinion?
Yeah, you could be right in the Idrissa Guy comments. I mean, that probably takes a little bit of pressure off Gareth Barry to do a little bit less running, if you like. I mean, the way Gareth Barry plays anyway, he doesn't really do a lot of running as it is. His positional and his tactical sense is probably if one of the best, if not the best in the Premier League. I think the way he reads the game, his tackles, he puts bodies in it. He's very clever in the way he goes about the pitch. But I think you could be right in what you say about Idrissa Gueye. He might take a little bit of pressure off him there. Yeah,
well, because the way I saw it, and I may be wrong on the untrained eye. I mean, I've never been a football manager. However, I thought that what Idrissa Gueye gives him is he'll do the work in behind him and just let Barry push on a little bit and dictate the play. And I've been obviously we attempted to do this call last week, didn't we? And I think at one point you got cut off.
We did, yeah.
Because your dad was calling you your bird. Well, you said you said it wasn't your bird, but I didn't believe you. I think she was trying to get hold of you. Said
she may say something different.
She what?
She may say something different.
Yeah, well, to be fair, they always do. Going back to... So we missed him out, and he's been exceptional, guys, since he's come in. Obviously, we had the first game against Tottenham, and everybody raved about him. They did a little feature on him on Match of the Day. And then, we saw him. I thought he was good again against West Brom. But he just alleviates a bit of that pressure off of Gareth Barry and allows the best of Barry to come out.
Definitely. And to be fair as well, what was it, 7 million that we paid for him from Villa? I think 7 million in this day and age is an absolute steal. Well, it really is.
Yeah, well, I work with a Villa fan, and he came out and he's like, look, I don't want to offend you, but I think that just a guy could have gone to any of the bigger clubs in commerce within the country. He said, I thought we'd have sides across Europe knocking on the door for him, and he said it's a proper steal for Everton. And this was a few weeks ago, and I said, well, we'll wait and see. Obviously, he played in the Espanyol game, which gave away a penalty, but played relatively well. And then, obviously, since then, I think we've just been also impressed with him.
I think that's where probably the likes of the scouting network will probably come in, because Steve Walsh has probably seen him playing and probably thought, well, there's our Kante, if you like. If you want to make that comparison with Kante, he's probably thought he could do a job for us here at Everton. And I think that's where we've sort of been quite savvy and got in there pretty early on, and just nabbed him while we can. Yeah,
do you know what the Kante analogy that you've just given there? That's not that mental. I mean, Kante obviously had an exceptional season last season with Leicester, but if you look at the stats, and I know you can always take them with a pinch of salt. However, they were on par last season, weren't they, with Kante? So, I think we've got a steal there. And if it's allowing us to get a little bit more juice out of Gareth Barry, because I think we were all concerned towards the back end of last season, and there was a whole myriad of issues, weren't there, last season with regards to the side. But, we were worried. We were thinking, we've probably seen the end of Barry here. And now we're thinking, well, we could potentially get another season out of him at a really decent level.
It's almost like he's getting younger as he gets older. That's the way it comes across to me.
Yeah, and I mean, it is the intelligence thing with him as well, and that allows him, I think, to go that bit further. Maybe if he wasn't as smart with regards to his football brain, I mean, I don't know how good he is at maths, but he also looks like quite an intelligent guy. Do you know what I mean? Like if he was your science teacher, you'd be like, yeah, I can. You know what I mean?
You'd take everything in.
Yeah. So he looks like an intelligent guy, and when it comes to football, it is evident that he is. But I think that just gives him that little bit extra. So from old to the young, then Mason Holgate. Tell me what you think about Mason Holgate then.
A real talent. I don't think he'll play as much this season. I think this season is probably more about his development more than anything, and give him a little bit of a taste of the Premier League and the pace of it. But from what I've seen so far, I mean, he's have no problems in handling the pressure that's probably going to be put on him. Yeah,
Koeman's got a bit of a job to try and get back in ahead of him. Again, I was thinking about this yesterday, and are you sure that Koeman's going to be able to nudge him out the side? If, say, I don't know how long Koeman's injured for, but if it's, say, another 2 weeks, Mason Holgate puts in another 2 performances like the ones that he's already put in, can you see that Koeman's just going to be able to waltz back into the side?
I don't think he'll waltz back into the side, but I think it probably would be the sensible decision to let Holgate have a good run in the side and then probably take him out to the firing line a little bit. You know, he could go on a 2 or 3 game run where he's going to have, you know, a couple of bad games. All footballers go through that. So to take him out probably while he's playing sort of quite well, I think it might be a little bit of a sort of sensible decision probably from Koeman if he does eventually decide just to drop him and put the more experienced Seamus Coleman back in there.
Yeah. And just, I know he's gone now and we don't want to keep on harping on about him, but do you think that Koeman looked at it with regards to John Stones and then he said that we can let him go for this astronomical price tag. We've got someone here in Mason Holgate who can come in, because I believe that Holgate can play centre half as well. I am right.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
So do you think he looked at it and was like, "I've got this guy in the wings"?
Potentially, but I think the price tag probably did sway it a little bit with John Stones, and the fact that he didn't really want to be at the club again probably swung it. So I think the ball was probably firmly in John Stones' court in that sense, and 50 million was too much to turn down for Everton.
Of course, I suppose I think the point I'm making is it's just really refreshing again and nice to see Everton just churn out these talented youngsters, because we've always had a knack of doing that anyway. Historically, I think it's fair to say about Everton. I mean,
yeah. I mean, to be fair though, I think you look at our academy and you're right in saying that we've got a really good setup there, the Finch Farm and the under 18s, under 23s and stuff. But tell you what, Barnsley are churning some real talent out as well.
Well, that's true actually, because Holgate is obviously is originally from Barnsley as well. So yeah, Everton can't take too much credit for that. I suppose. However, though, it is just nice to see that these lads are there, and we can do a separate video on the volume and the richness of the youth that Everton have potentially to come through. I mean, there's obviously copious amount of names, and we'll actually get onto one in a bit. But moving on then. So just quickly, let's just talk about, with regards to this game, the ability to break West Brom down. Now, I don't want to use too many Pulis cliches because there's loads of them, and I said this to a mate of mine on Twitter on Saturday. But how impressed were you that we managed to get in behind them, that we managed to eventually force a second goal and get in front?
Again, I mean, I said before, I think the likes of Lukaku when he came on totally changed the game. It gave us a target man, but then it frees up the left and the right sides of midfield and gave us a little bit more space to try and create something. And obviously, that ended up in winning the game 2-1. So I think Koeman's got to take a lot of credit for that. To identify the problem first of all, to act on it, and then to implement the changes, and then subsequently win the game 2-1.
Yeah, and what did you make of Bolassi's cameo then?
Even though it was a cameo, I tell you what, him and Lukaku could frighten any defence. The way they were linking up, Lukaku should have scored. Bolassi probably could have had another two assists.
Yeah.
So, in that sort of department, and with Lukaku now turning around, saying that he wants to stay, keep them two fit, we could tear some defences apart this season.
Definitely, I mean, talking about opposition defences there, you imagine you're in a situation, you've got Morales on one side, Balassi on the other, Lukaku, Barkley behind him. I mean, that's a lot to think about for any defence in the land.
And the thing is, though, as well, when you think, you've got Morales on one side, potentially Deulofeu on the other, or Balassi, then you've got Lukaku up front. I know we'll probably touch on it in a bit, but, the people that he could potentially bring in as well in them sort of positions is only going to strengthen the bench.
Yeah. And I remember before Balassi came on board, and in one of the videos that I did, the video that I did when Balassi signed, I said people were very critical, and they'd say to me, they'd say, "Oh, you spend a lot of money on Balassi. I mean, he doesn't score that many. He hasn't got that many assists last season." Plucking out statistics again, but I mean, we've seen that with regards to the assisting, if the Barkley chance was a great example. I mean, Balassi can put as many balls into the box as he needs to. If they're not nobody's finishing them off, then you can't point at the lad then. So, but no, I was impressed that he created those decent chances, and hopefully, as maybe the rust starts to sweep away, Barkley will be converting those chances. Lukaku will be converting those chances in the next few weeks.
I think the next league game will be interesting to see whether he does make them changes and whether he does bring Balassi in now, and whether that little cameo that he did make at the weekend will cement his place in the next 11.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm kind of thinking now we will see him start against Stoke. I don't think Deulofeu has done enough, to be honest. I know he's tried him up top, and we look very blunt, I think. I mean, he obviously, his speed, he's got to be thinking about that. But I just think we look a little bit blunt when he's leading the line, right?
Yeah, we do look a little bit toothless.
Yeah.
The good thing about Deulofeu is his quick feet in and around the area. He could easily win us penalties throughout the season. But it's not the be all and end all. Let's be honest. You need someone who's got a little bit more cut and thrust about them, and looking at Balassi and Lukaku's sort of link-up play at the weekends, I think that could potentially be the lethal partnership that we've been looking for.
Yeah, because I remember you called it last week when we had the conversation on Thursday, that we didn't manage to get online because I brought some. Well, I got hold of some dodgy software, which I don't advocate, by the way. So I've actually put my hand in my pocket now and brought some of the official stuff.
Apple, if you're watching.
But yeah, God, yeah, don't let them guys get after me. But you predicted that Balassi would start against West Brom, and I to be fair, Seddo, I was like, I'm not sure he'll throw him in, but I think we're both confident now that he probably will start against Stoke at the weekend. So moving on then from Balassi, let's talk about some potential signings, shall we? Right now, we were joking before I hit record, and you know where I'm going with this. My pronunciation, it's already been picked up on by some of the lads over at GrandOldTeam. My pronunciation is dreadful. I was calling Koeman Koeman the other week, and someone called me up on that and said it's Koeman.
We've sorted that one for you.
So I've sorted that one now, and then now I'm going to pronounce this lad's name who we're linked with from FC Porto. No, Joe Hart. Yeah, mate, Joe Hart, I'm okay with that one, as I said. So, Yacine Brahimi. He plays for FC Porto. I think he plays out wide, and he can play through the middle as well. 21 goals in 77 appearances for them. You know much about this lad?
I'll be honest, I don't know anything about him, really. What I can sort of take from that particular link is either Koeman doesn't like Morales or he doesn't like Deulofeu. Now, for me, if this signing does come off, and I've seen reports, in the fee of north of 30-40 million for this particular player, so I wouldn't imagine he's going to be on the bench. So one of them two players is probably going to drop out the starting 11. So whether it's from my understanding and looking at that particular signing, if it does happen, it could be Morales who drops down to the bench.
Yeah, well, obviously with bringing in Balassi for the left-hand side, which is nice now that we've got. Since Pienaar dropped off completely. I know he was hanging around last year, but we haven't had like a real kind of left-sided threat, have we now, for a while?
Yeah.
So you would say that this lad, I mean, I don't know whether he plays on the right or the left, but you'd assume they've just paid that money for Balassi. This lad probably plays on the right. So yeah, I mean, but would Koeman look at it and say, I want two decent options for both sides?
Potentially, but I don't think we'd like to start spending, 30, 40, 45 million on one player for him to sit on the bench. He could be an absolute worldie, and we don't know much about him. But just looking into it, I just feel as though he doesn't like Morelos, and at the moment, because he hasn't got that sort of backup for them positions, then he's sort of forced to play them players, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So if this player does come in, then I think that will relegate Deulofeu and Morelos to the bench, and obviously Brahimi and Balassi will come into the 11.
Brahimi, I think you did a better effort than me there. I've written it down. I don't know if you could see this. I've written it down and I've put I've spaced it out. Can you see that there, mate, or not? So so I can try and pronounce it properly. Anyway, yeah, no, I've got big fee down here as well, 32 million. So as you say, I'd feel a little bit sorry for Morelos, because his attitude since the manager, I thought he was really unfairly treated by Martinez anyway. I think
absolutely, yeah.
We were all a bit like, there was games last season when it was crying out for him. Now I know people will go, well, that time when he did bring him on, he got sent off after 35 seconds or something. That was obviously frustration. But I like Morelos, and I think against West Brom, he worked. I thought he worked exceptionally hard. Something that we haven't seen from him too much in obviously under Martinez. I
totally agree with you, but it begs the question though: is he a Ronald Koeman type player? Now, the players that we've been linked with, in the past couple of weeks, it doesn't suggest that he's that type of player that Koeman probably looks for. I don't think he's very physical. His defensive work probably leaves a little bit to be desired. Don't get me wrong, the past, 2 games, he has worked really hard, but it's whether he fits that mould of a Ronald Koeman player.
That's right, yeah. But moving on then from Morelos, let's talk about someone else who potentially could be joining Everton within the next few days. Joe Hart from Manchester City. What are your thoughts then on Joe Hart then signing? Do you think this is a possibility? It sounds like it is.
I think it's a massive possibility, yeah. From the stuff that we've read in the press and obviously on Twitter and stuff, he probably prefers a move to Everton to stay in the Premier League. At the moment, the way Stecklenberg's playing, will he be first choice? Who knows? It's good competition.
Yeah. You'd like to think, again, if Joe Hart came in, I know Stecklenberg's been good, that he would probably get ahead of Stecklenberg.
You'd like to think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah. But just on Joe Hart for a second, what's the deal with Liverpool? Because I'm a little bit concerned. Obviously we all enjoyed the weekend, but apparently Mignolet was had a terrible game again. What's the odds on them maybe striking up a bit of interest? And would Joe Hart look at that still?
The problem that Liverpool have got is they've got a goalkeeper there that they've only just recently signed, and I think he was injured in pre-season. Now I don't know whether he's out for a couple of weeks, a couple of months. I'm not too sure, but I would imagine once he's fit, he'll be the number one. I don't think Joe Hart will be the number one at Liverpool. In my opinion, I think Hart's got more of a chance of keeping his place at Everton and playing 30 plus games for us. Whereas at Liverpool, I think he'll make very minimal appearances, in my opinion. Right,
because they've spent the money to sign this other lad who will be, because regardless, I think wherever Joe Hart's going to go, it's going to be on loan. So I think that's a good way of looking at it, and hopefully you're right, because I would love us to sign Joe Hart, even if it is on loan. I think it just sends out a message,
Look, he's England's number one, and he's not England's number one for no reason. Fair enough, he didn't have the best of Euros, but every goalkeeper goes through a bad spell. Look at Tim Howard.
Yeah.
Tim Howard, I think, was a fantastic servant to Everton Football Club, and there was games there where he's kept us in it, and he's physically won us the points. Every goalkeeper goes through through games where, they're not having the best of games, 3 or 4 weeks on the trot. And that's probably what Joe Hart's just recently gone through.
Yeah.
Now, give him a new lease of life at Everton, and, we could have an absolute gem.
No, I think you're right, definitely. You're spot on. I'm going back on with regards to the England thing. I mean, you've got Butland now who's coming back to fitness with Stoke. He's potentially probably going to play against us. So, I mean, people before Butland got injured were starting to, the voices were starting to get louder to include, well, Butland would be England's number one. People were questioning Joe Hart then. So it's important that he does get a good season underneath his belt, and hopefully, he could come to our place and do that and be part of something that's quite exciting as well.
I think the most important thing for Joe Hart at the moment is he needs to play games, because if he doesn't play games, he will lose that number one spot for England. It's as simple as that. So if he wants to hold on to that number one jersey for England, he's got to play games. It's just as plain and simple as that.
Yeah. And moving on quickly, I I forgot to I missed this guy off the list that I sent over to you before we went live. But we've got Koeman up at Sunderland. Apparently he's not been included now. Moyes has said to him, "You're not allowed anywhere near the training ground." It looks like he's probably potentially going to be joining Everton, right?
I think it will be a good deal for Everton. From the messages that I've been getting off the Sunderland fans on Twitter, they'll be sorry to see him go. He seems to be the linchpin of their defence at the moment, and obviously looking at the game at the weekend, I think he went down 2-1 to Borough, and he didn't look the best at the back, to be fair.
No, interesting that Moyes obviously has re-signed Pienaar, and he played. I think I read that I didn't see the game. I was travelling back up from London on Sunday, but I read that he played. Did he play Stephen Pienaar in centre midfield or something?
He brought him on as a centre midfielder, and I thought, what's going on here?
Right, okay. Well, anyway, Moyes thankfully has absolutely nothing to do with Everton anymore. Although we're very grateful for the time that he spent with us, but thank God we didn't bring him back. Galloway, he's gone out on loan to West Brom. Are you a little bit concerned about Galloway going out on loan now with the lack of depth now and cover at left back, or does this mean that Koeman's got something up his sleeve and we're potentially going to sign someone at left full back?
I think the reason he sent him out on loan is I don't think he's ready for the first team yet. I think he's had a couple of good games, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's ready for that consistent run of games in the first team. I think going to is it West Brom he's gone to?
Yeah, he's gone to West Brom. Yeah.
So I think going to West Brom will sort of give him that little bit of steel that he needs, I think, to sort of kick him onto that next level. And obviously the way, Koeman's acting in the transfer market at the moment, I think he's going to need that. Yeah.
No, definitely. I mean, if he's going to go anywhere, that's a good place to go to, with regards to we've just experienced how they set up, and he's Pulis gets a lot of stick, and he wears that cap all the time, and all the funny things that come along with Pulis. But at the end of the day, if he's a decent enough manager, and I think he'll teach Galloway a thing or two, and will reap the benefits of that. And as you said, I mean, I don't think he's potentially there yet for us, but a good season with them, and he could very well be. And James McCarthy, just finally, obviously he's heavily linked with Sunderland. Now I'm going to be controversial here, and this goes against the grain a little bit, but I don't want us to sell James McCarthy, and I'll just tell you why. Because I don't think at the moment we have the depth within centre midfield, that area of the pitch, to be letting him go. Mo Besic's injured now for the long term. Obviously, you've got young lad Davis, who's only young. I know he's been very, very good, but I don't know whether he could fill in. We could ask him to fill in potentially for large proportions of the season if Barry, say, got injured. Obviously, Barry's getting on a little bit now. Obviously, there's who else? We've got Tom Cleverley could potentially play there. But do you see the point I'm making? So, would you be happy for us to let him go, or would you want reassurances?
If we've not got a replacement, then I wouldn't let him go. If we've got something up our sleeve, the likes of Carvalho or someone like that, I would let him go tomorrow. I think we need something more than what James McCarthy can offer us at the moment. I think there's probably better players out there. And it would be interesting to see whether he would be part of any deal that would bring Koeman the other way.
Yeah, I just think that first season and for decent spells in the second season, he was with us under Martinez. I was pretty impressed by him. And again, you know, players do drop out of form. We've already covered that with regards to Hart. I just don't know. Maybe I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt a little bit too much. I mean, I get there's a lot of criticism for him, and I'm probably in a minority now with regards to James McCarthy. But I wouldn't be too inclined to drop him out at the moment.
I can see where you're coming from, but as I say, I think it goes back to one: are we going to get somebody in to replace him? And two, is that person better than James McCarthy? You know, they're the two sort of big questions that need to be asked. I mean, I don't think a lot of Evertonians would cry if he left.
No.
But it's just obviously, again, whether we get that player in to cover his position.
Yeah. Well, Seddo, obviously, I appreciate you talking to me tonight for GrandOldTeam TV. I'm going to try and do more of these interviews, so I'm sure I'll have you back on throughout the season, and we'll continue to touch base and talk all things Everton, so I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me on, Adam. Cheers, mate.
No problem, mate. Take care.
Thank you. See you now.